Hello, everyone, and welcome to Through the Covers. I'm Fred, and I'm really excited to finally get this podcast started. If you're someone who loves cricket conversations beyond just match highlights, then this podcast is for you. Through the Covers is where we dive deeper into the game, the latest cricketing news, player statistics, match analysis, team strategies, and of course some predictions about where the game might be heading. Cricket today is evolving faster than ever. Teams are experimenting with new approaches, players are redefining roles, and data-driven decisions are becoming more important with every tournament. Through this podcast, the goal is to understand the game from that perspective, not just what happens on the field, but why it happens. Welcome back, everyone, to Through the Covers. This is Fred. And what a game we just witnessed in Guwahati, because on the surface, it looks like a straightforward chase. Rajasthan Royals getting to 202 with 6 wickets in hand. But when you really break this game down, there are so many tactical layers, decision-making moments, and contrasting approaches that define the outcome. And I want to start with RCB, because despite the loss, there's a lot to unpack in how they even got to 200 in the first place. This wasn't a dominant batting display from start to finish. It was actually a recovery job after a phase where they completely lost momentum. The middle overs saw a collapse brewing, dot ball pressure building, wickets falling at the wrong time, and in those moments, most teams end up with 170 to 175. But RCB pushed beyond that psychological 200 mark, and that's where management clarity and role definition comes into play, because the impact sub-call yesterday was not just a random change, it was a calculated tactical correction, bringing back Venkatesh Iyer instead of continuing with a bowling-heavy combination, showed intent to back batting depth. And that move paid off immediately. His 29 wasn't just about runs, it was about timing. It came right when RCB needed a momentum shift. And that last over against Sandeep Sharma, where he took 21 runs, completely altered the innings trajectory. Because death overs are not just about scoring runs, they're about breaking the bowling side's confidence going into the chase. And in that sense, RCB did their job. But here's where the bigger issue lies. They won moments but not phases, and T20 cricket is increasingly becoming a game of phase control rather than isolated brilliance. Now, if you look at RCB's bowling, this is where the game slipped, and not subtly, it was quite evident. Their fast bowlers were taken apart, and it wasn't just execution, it was also predictability. Lengths were repetitive. Pace variations were either too early or too obvious. And Rajasthan's batters lined them up beautifully, especially on a pitch where the ball was coming onto the bat nicely under lights. But the real contrast, and this is the biggest tactical takeaway from this match, was the effectiveness of spin, particularly wrist spin. Because while the Pacers were going at 10, 11, even 12 and over at times, the spinners were operating at around 7, creating pressure, forcing batters to take risks against the seamers instead. And this is where someone like Ravi Bishnoi stands out. He's not just picking wickets, he's controlling tempo, his lengths are consistent, he attacks the stumps, mixes pace subtly rather than dramatically, and most importantly, he reads batters, which is why he's becoming such a reliable middle overs enforcer. And if you look at the difference between the two sides, Rajasthan had that control element, RCB didn't. And in high-scoring games, that control becomes the deciding factor. Shifting to Rajasthan's batting, this was a chase built on clarity rather than panic. They didn't go into a shell despite the target. They understood that 200 on this surface wasn't unchaseable, and the intent from the younger players stood out, especially Vaibhav Sooryavanshi. And what impresses me most about him is not just the fearlessness, but the awareness. A lot of young players come in and swing hard from ball 1, but he's doing something more nuanced. He's identifying bowlers' patterns very early. He's picking length quicker than most. And what's even more impressive is his ability to convert good balls into scoring opportunities. That's a hallmark of high-level batting, using angles, creating room, manipulating field placements, and then when a genuinely good ball is bowled, he respects it, resets, and goes again. That balance is what separates promising talent from long-term performers, and this doesn't happen in isolation. It's a reflection of how players are being coached today, which brings me to a broader shift we're seeing in the game. The influence of coaching staff and analytics teams has grown massively over the last 4 to 5 years. And while it's improved decision-making consistency, it's also subtly changed the role of captains on the field. If you go back to eras led by MS Dhoni, Rohit Sharma, or even Ricky Ponting, captains were the primary decision-makers, reading the game in real time, adjusting fields ball by ball, making instinctive bowling changes. But now, a lot of that thinking is pre-structured. Teams walk in with scenario-based plans, matchups already defined, and support staff heavily involved in those decisions, sometimes even dictating them indirectly. And while this leads to fewer errors, it can also limit the development of instinctive leadership among players, and what we're seeing this IPL season is a mix of both worlds. Teams that strike the right balance between structure and on-field adaptability are the ones gaining an edge. Now let's transition into what's coming up next, because we've got a proper doubleheader, and the first game between Punjab Kings and Sunrisers Hyderabad in New Chandigarh is going to be fascinating. From a conditions and matchups perspective, this venue has generally offered true bounce early on, making it a good surface for stroke play, but as the game progresses, it can grip just a little, especially for cutters and hard-length bowling. So I'd peg the par score in the 180 to 195 range. Anything above 190 becomes highly competitive, and the toss could play a role, but not a decisive one. Batting first gives you scoreboard pressure, but chasing is still very doable if you manage the power play well. Key matchups here will revolve around how Punjab's aggressive top order handles Hyderabad's new ball discipline, because if Hyderabad can strike early, they expose a middle order that has shown some inconsistency. On the other hand, Hyderabad's batting against Punjab's death bowling is another critical phase. Punjab have struggled to close out innings cleanly, so if Hyderabad have wickets in hand at the 15-over mark, they can really capitalize. And overall, I slightly lean towards Sunrisers Hyderabad in this game, especially if they get their bowling plans right up front. And then we move to the second game, Chennai Super Kings versus Delhi Capitals in Chepauk, and this is a completely different tactical battle. This is not about high scores. This is about control, patience, and understanding conditions. Chepauk is traditionally slow, offers grip for spinners, and makes stroke-making progressively harder. So a par score here is around 160 to 170. Maybe even 155 could be defendable depending on how the pitch plays. Batting first is usually the preferred option, because chasing under pressure on a slowing surface is never easy, and the key battles here are very clear. Delhi's younger batters against Chennai's experienced spin attack, because if Chennai's spinners get into the game early, they can completely dictate the tempo. And on the flip side, how Chennai's top order handles Delhi's pace in the power play will set the tone. If Delhi can strike early, they bring Chennai's middle order into play sooner than they'd like, but overall, experience in these conditions matters a lot, and that's why I'm backing Chennai Super Kings to edge this one, especially at home where they understand the nuances of the surface better than anyone. So two very different games lined up, one likely to be high-scoring and explosive, the other more tactical and grind-based, and that's what makes days like this in the IPL so exciting. But that's all from me today. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to Through the Covers so you don't miss any of our episodes. And do follow us on Instagram, where we break down even more moments from these games. Until next time, this is Fred, signing off.